The charred husk of the mansion offered nothing on the whereabouts of the last Albrecht. Charlie. A real bastard. Keen on murder. And some kind of immortal. I wouldn't have escaped the dungeon below without Adamo and his mobsters. He'd burned them all to ash with a flamethrower. Yet Charlie, or his demon, had managed to put him back together. It defied sense. I thought you'd given up on the world making sense since we got hitched. Olive, my demon, anchored to the tattoo on my forearm. A snake wrapped around her invisible yet seductive form, quipped. There's nothing here, Alton. Charlie's gone. He's gone, I informed Adamo. My friend adjusted his glasses. A subtle sign of frustration from a man more academic than criminal. Left town? Olive answered. Likely, yes. Maybe to regroup. Maybe he's been reassigned. I'm guessing he's across the border, but who knows? Few could see or hear a demon unless they wanted to make themselves known, which was rare. Demons, or whatever Olive and her fellow entities called themselves, were more comfortable in a world where humans steadily doubted the existence of evil beyond themselves. The atrocities of World War II were conducted by people. Not gods, not devils, just men. And that gave many pause in attributing the origin of woe to supernatural forces. Hell, I doubted it too. Maybe across the border, I said to Adamo. Adamo nodded slowly. Others will assume he's dead if he doesn't resurface. I see. Olive had it wrong. Charlie didn't need to regroup. He'd been burnt to nothing and walked away. The infernal immortal of untold powers. He could go into the casino and kill us all. Even with what power Olive could give me, I don't think I could stop him. No. Charlie had left us for a different reason. His mission. As a Soviet agent, a traitor to Canada, he'd likely been tasked with disrupting and weakening society. To that end, his sudden absence would create speculation amongst the crime families in Bridal Veil Lake. The Albrechts had their money in many illegal endeavors. With the family seemingly wiped out, a power vacuum had been created. These cavities in the makeup of the underworld would have to be filled, and each group would think that they would be the ones to do it. I didn't ask if Adamo still thought he could pin the destruction of the mansion and the missing Albrechts on one of his rivals. He would have said so. Instead, we returned to his car, and smoked in the back seat, while his chauffeur drove us back from the rich part of town to Tour Hill. We could, I ventured slowly, giving time for Adamo to return from his deep thinking. Tell the other leaders the truth. Olive snickered. Oh yeah, that'll go over well. I wanted to tell her to shut up. Adamo had intuited the existence of Olive, but wisely reserved his judgment. I don't know if he believed an entity followed me everywhere, or if he thought I'd simply lost my mind. He seemed like the type to only decide when all the facts were revealed. Certainly, he'd seen unreasonable and terrifying things in the Albrecht's basement. Abominations and the impossible. One did not return from bullets to the brain. Yet the Albrechts had done just that. Not once, but several times. I tried telling him about my mission in Bridal Veil Lake, about Olive and the world of demons, allying themselves with both the East and West, but we'd never spoken about it candidly again. Perhaps, Adamo said, aiming a plume through a gap in the window. Part of the truth. Which part? I wondered. That they were traitors to the country. We could say the RCMP attacked and a spook was involved. Look, Adamo, I said, I know your men know about me. Hell, they even know my name. But I'm not sure the RCMP or any of the other secret services want me to advertise. It could compromise the mission. Adamo didn't counter. He continued staring out the window, and we smoked our cigarettes in silence, until we reached the Jade Empress. Breakfast seemed in order. I offered to buy it this time, which was a joke. Mr. Adamo DeFranco and I never paid. We left big tips, though. There were a few tourists seated already. The nearest waiter ceased his interaction with a young couple trying to order something for their baby.
Mr. DeFranco,
the waiter stammered. He looked stressed. I would have objected, but Adamo beat me to it. Hold on, he said. Go and finish with that couple first. You run a decent restaurant where people are treated with the utmost respect. Is that right? The waiter nodded eagerly.
But, Mr. DeFranco, there's some men to see you, and...
Adamo cut him off. They can wait, and so can I. Off you go. Our usual table in the back corner had been reserved, of course. A perk of being the boss. But one Adamo had never asked for. He preferred people to respect him for his kindness and keen mind. His vicious brother, Frank, who I had killed, ruled through violence and fear. Adamo wanted to inspire his people, make them believe that what they did provided community and security. Would he resort to force? You bet. The man knew how to handle himself, but only when diplomacy and less costly options were exhausted. A different waiter filled our coffee mugs. Adamo, I said. I see them, Alton. Nevertheless, he calmly unfolded the newspaper, appearing entirely unbothered by the large fellow stewing in the booth next to ours. Friends? He didn't answer, and that told me everything. They looked like leg breakers. As if rehearsed, the four of them got up together and moved toward our table. That's far enough, I said, patting my coat. I didn't need my pistol to handle these guys, but violence in the Jade Empress would certainly be frowned upon by Adamo. Plus, we hadn't reached mid-morning, and it already felt like a long day. Mr. DeFranco, a sizable yet lumpy man in a cheap suit said. Harry Dogood. He extended his hairy hand, which Adamo wisely declined. Mr. Dogood, Adamo said after an intentional pause that made Harry and his motley crew seem nervous. The bank robber. Harry pulled off his hat, revealing stringy hair on a shiny scalp. Why not just cut it off? The hair, not the scalp. He held his hat in both hands like an apologetic child. That's right, Mr. DeFranco. I did that. Did what? I asked. I'd never heard of Harry Dogood. Once upon a time, Adamo said, sounding bored and not at all suited to using such a whimsical phrase. Mr. Dogood here lowered himself through a skylight of the Imperial Bank of Canada. It was early in the morning, and he waited for employees to arrive. He tied them all up and walked away with, about $18,000 in cash and bonds. Didn't get far, though, eh, Harry? No, sir, Mr. DeFranco, Harry admitted. And I wouldn't say I walked away, though that was the plan, sir. He looked at me to explain, since Adamo seemed to know the whole story well. Got spotted, stole a taxi. Got nabbed on my way to St. Catharines. Did my time, got out of jail. Now I'm back home with my mom. His expression shifted into greater malaise. Only thing is, I can't get a job anywhere. Without taking his eyes from the newspaper, Adamo observed the fact that the man arrived in a company. He seemed to have fallen in with some sort of operation. Yes, sir. No, sir. Harry clasped a hand over his mouth. You see, the truth is, Mr. DeFranco, there are a lot of guys like me. Soldiers back from the war. And, you see, things didn't go well for our families while we were gone. I only tried to rob the bank, sir, because my mom is sick. My wife and kids weren't living in the house when I got back. Mom said she'd left with some other guy. Finally, Adamo set down the newspaper. Why are you here today, gentlemen? Looking back to his friends, Harry received 3 silent but desperate glares, encouraging him to proceed with one very obvious question. We need work, sir. We're all out of jail, did our time, sir. Nobody will hire us. We've got no families left, except for me and my mom. And we don't want to change our names or forget who we are. We're not bad people.
They called us heroes for what we did in the war. Can't forget that. Might be the best we've ever done.
I'm not exactly sure what job you think you would do for me, Adamo pointed out. The man had to be careful. He'd bribed the majority of Bridal Veil Lake Police, but that didn't mean some other federal organization didn't want his head. Even as a member of the RCMP, I couldn't protect him. Mostly because the regular RCMP didn't exactly know I existed, and Camp X, where I came from, had been officially shut down.
Sir?
Harry made his voice quiet and crouched lower, bringing his face too close for my friend's comfort, though Adamo hit it well.
I heard you lost some men. We're soldiers. We're soldiers. We're still strong and...
Adamo silenced him with an extended index finger. Aside from spraying fire into a family of extremely possessed dilettantes, this was the most aggressive action I'd ever seen Adamo display.
Where did you hear that, Harry?
Harry blubbered.
Well, sir, I didn't mean no offense or anything. I overheard a few men at the General Brock, sir. Now, I don't know who they were, but they said...
Tell me, Adamo ordered him. Their exact words. Sweat pasted Harry's stringy hair to his scalp under his meaty palm.
I'm not sure, sir. Even if I can't remember exactly.
One of Harry's comrades mercifully came to his aid.
I think they were yours, Mr. DeFranco. One of them said you'd lost close to half of everybody. Then he took a drink, sir, and said goodnight. The other sat a while, continued drinking. He seemed fairly shocked by whatever happened, sir.
Finally, Adamo lowered his finger, but remained tense as he studied the four of them. You know, I just thought of something. He clearly lied. Adamo never had sudden bursts of inspiration. He'd have ideas and only present them as one would move chess pieces, all with a grand strategy in mind. This is my friend, Mr. Anderson. Oh no, Olive lamented. We're in it now, aren't we? I watched and waited. Ever since the Albrechts, I had felt a shift in my friendship with Adamo. After he'd assisted, by stepping aside, in the death of his brother at my hands, I had respected him. That respect had grown over the months, because he seemed at odds with his unsavory career. A mob boss that despised being both a boss and the mob. Alton was a soldier too, Adamo continued. But he has a new job now, one that provides him enormous resources. Why, just the other day he bought a $4,000 car. Harry and his fellows appeared astonished. They'd be less impressed if they knew the car had been an ordinary Studebaker that had seen better days. I'd bought it in a hurry from a couple on their honeymoon. Why? I needed to ride fast in order to stop Adamo's men from attacking the demonically possessed Albrechts. In the end, only a few made it out alive, and not because of me. It had been Adamo with the flamethrower. He had saved my life, too. I owed it to him to play along with whatever thing he had in mind here. Plus, I admit to wanting to help fellow veterans. There hadn't been much support for returning soldiers. Sometimes they got a little money or help finding a job, but not always. Coming home felt like arriving on a strange planet where only you and a handful of others understood reality. Work has been difficult, hasn't it, Alton? Adamo asked, while already knowing the truth. I'd completed 3 missions since September, and almost died on each. Still, I didn't know exactly what I would do with 4 guys. My friend, so astute, noticed my struggle. You get the names, but you don't often know where to find them. 4 locals, one of them observant enough to track me down on some overheard gossip, might be useful. He retrieved a small diary from inside his jacket. They'll stay here, of course. Several apartments are vacant. You'll cover their rent while you employ them. The Canadian government would. My account, the one they'd given me, had just under $100,000 in it. That's about $1.5 million these days. I'm not so sure about this, Alton, Olive said. He's not wrong. We need help. She confirmed the ability to hear my directed thoughts by replying, "We don't even know who they are." "Harry Dogood, daring bank robber. Haven't you been listening?" Olive chose to remain silent rather than respond to my taunts. A frustrating habit she'd adopted recently. I liked it better when we bantered.
"Can I bring my mom?"
Harry asked. The settlement of my 4 goons followed swift introductions. Harry Dogood, of course. Robert McDonald. Big guy. Quiet. A little too quiet. I could barely hear when he said his name. Larry Wilson. Short, but at least as broad as Robert. He'd been the one to speak up on behalf of Harry, and had a sparkle to his eyes that made it look like he could start crying at any second. Arthur Reed. Quiet too, but twitchy, like it took effort to keep his mouth shut. He wasn't as big as the other 3. Tall, sure, but lean, with long arms and thin fingers. Still reading, Adamo allowed himself a subtle smile. 5 Scots. What are the chances?
"Begging your pardon, sir, Mr. DeFranco,"
Robert said.
"We're Canadians."
"I stand corrected," Adamo said. I told the men to sit down at their original table while I figured out what assistance they could offer. Extra muscle and more guns would be useful. Against demons, however, it might just get them killed. They seemed like nice guys. I didn't want them to die. "Okay," I started. "Here's the job. You go around town, your favorite haunts, and you listen. Just like Harry did at the pub, alright? Be here at this table every morning to provide a report. I may not show up for these morning meetings every day. Hell, I like to sleep in sometimes. It just means I'm busy. Or dead. I didn't want to scare them either, though. If you hear anything interesting or suspicious, of a criminal nature especially, or even just odd, you make a note and you tell me. For that, I'll pay you $60 a week. Each." They got excited. Harry drummed his hands like an imbecile on the tabletop, rattling the utensils and plates. "You cut that out," I said, a little severely. Their faces dropped. Jeez, they look like kids. "You work for me now, and that means you're quiet, observant, and don't draw attention to yourself. You got that?" "Yes, sir," they answered in unison. Soldiers, indeed. "You can address me as captain," I told them. "That's what I'd left the war with, and I'd prefer you not use my name in public too often. Especially if I'd somehow been talked into forming my own gang." Maybe that's why he did it. Olive weighed in. She distracted me. I almost answered, "What?" "Captain?" Harry said. "You alright? You look like..." He thought better of saying and straightened up in the booth. "Say it," I ordered. "Nothing, Captain," he said. "It just... well, it looked like you heard something is all." I nodded. He wasn't wrong. You gotta stay out of it sometimes, Olive. I'm trying to think. "Careful, my love," she said. "Don't hurt yourself. I'm sure you'll learn someday how to walk and carry a tune at the same time." Her laugh didn't sting. I adored the sound, and realized how sad she'd been lately. I wanted to help, but how? "Stupid thoughts again, Alton," she cooed. "Focus. I don't think we need the 4 Scots." "Canadians," I corrected her. "Heroes. Down on their luck. I have to help them." "Alton," Adamo said, "why not use the office upstairs for your meeting? People are trying to enjoy their breakfast. Go on, I'll be right up." The Jade Empress had packed it in today. As far as I knew, they were the only restaurant to serve Western-style food in the morning and traditional Chinese fare in the afternoon. I like both. I like the waiters and the manager, Lao Chi Wei. Hell's bells. Was I starting to get comfortable? "Slow down, cowboy," Olive cautioned. "All right, sure," I said. "Follow me, boys." Our quintet hit the door beside the washrooms, piling into a narrow stairwell I didn't know existed. Within 4 steps, we synchronized, And for reasons I didn't understand, that made me feel good. The office door had a stenciled name on the glass, Charles Lau. Sounded an awful lot like the manager. "Alton," Olive said in her cautionary tone. A little too late. The door shut behind us. Harry turned the bolt. I pretended not to notice the sudden aggressive energy building in the room, and walked to the desk where a swivel wingback chair turned, revealing Lao Chi Wei with a sword across his lap. "Welcome, gentlemen," he said in perfect English. "Mr. Alton, if you wouldn't mind stepping this way." He gestured to the side of his desk. I didn't have to ask what had changed. I saw the faces of the 4 Scots. Harry looked the guiltiest of all. The others just stared. "It's not personal, Captain," Larry said, before stepping forward with balled fists. A black metal dagger with a red tether seemed to appear from the small of his neck. He dropped and gasped silently, like a fish out of water. Lao Chi Wei was standing now. I hadn't heard him move. He presented his right hand, and 3 more identical daggers to the 3 remaining Scots. "Don't be fools, gentlemen," he advised them. Sweat coated Harry once more. "You don't understand. We can't go back. He'll kill us if we fail." I didn't fully understand what their intent had been in the first place. Olive somehow invisibly conveyed the rolling of her eyes. "Don't you get it? They weren't here for Adamo or jobs. They have a job. You're the job." She stopped short of calling me a dummy. "Who sent you?" I asked, presenting my well-wrought pistol. They ticked me off with their probably true sob story. I would have helped them. What now? "Speak up. Mr. DeFranco won't be so patient." "Charles Albrecht, sir," Harry said. "I'm sorry for this." For a big guy, he moved surprisingly fast, with an unexpected twist that caught Wei Lao Chi and I off guard. I missed with the pistol. The throwing knife buried itself in the wall. Harry threw his body into me with little effect, other than the slight inconvenience of dropping the well rod. He stepped back, a little confused. He was bigger. How could he have failed to budge a guy under 6 feet? He tried a wild haymaker. Fast, but not fast enough. The succubus in the room gave me augmented strength and speed. I caught his arm and accidentally punched a hole in his chest. If I could see my face, I bet it would have been just as shocked as Harry's. My entire fist had plunged through his ribcage and stopped his heart. Harry Dogood left his brief employment and sad life within the next 2 seconds. I used his body to the floor. My fist made a disgusting, wet sucking sound. A boot pulled from deep mud as I freed it. The 2 remaining men sank to their knees and trembled. Wei Lao remained calm as he casually slashed their throats with a single cut from his sword. The men slumped and bled out, twin pools colliding into an ocean across the hardwood. Adamo entered quietly. "Thank you, Chi Wei." He bowed slightly, and then, remarkably, began to speak Chinese. Cantonese, I learned later, to be specific. I didn't understand a word of their exchange, but it ended with Adamo apologizing in English. "I'm sorry I didn't have a better idea." "No trouble, my friend." Wei Lao nodded and smiled. "The Tong is grateful. I'm happy. Everything is good." He gave me a nod before finding the door, which left me with Adamo. "He's pretty sure you're a Guigui," Adamo said. "Gwei what?" Olive laughed. "A demon." "Oh." Adamo surveyed the damage. "Didn't think this room would be used for murder again." "Again?" "Before the casino had been finished, when they slapped that big dumb statue of Fortuna on the roof, to let everyone know where the illegal casino is." Adamo shook his head. "Frank had this room soundproof for his distasteful activities." He sneered and appeared as if he might throw up. That the mere thought of his older brother's murders of innocent girls disgusted him more than the actual dead bodies in his presence said a lot about the horror Frank had extracted from his victims. "Are you glad he's dead?" I asked. "Glad that I killed him?" "That's what you ask me?" he replied. "You're not upset I sent you up here completely unprepared for what was coming?" I shrugged. "We're friends, Adamo. If anyone could have thought of a better solution, it'd be you." I moved to the window, parted the blinds to the street and to her hill. "How'd you know it was coming?" "My men don't drink at the General Brock. Why would they? They drink here for free. They're also not so stupid as to talk about such matters openly. These men don't drink at the General Brock either. It's a cocktail lounge for guests. Requires proper attire. And ordered food as per the law. They've never stepped inside. It occurred to me that those 4 Canadians... Scots, I corrected. He smirked. Those 4 weren't here for me. It was a pretense to get close to you. Maybe a clumsy attempt to sow mistrust in my ranks." "It was Charlie," I said. "Uh-huh, that makes sense. His insanity, or maybe his arrogance, would excuse the brazen stupidity of moving into a hotel a few blocks away from you." Adamo joined me at the window while some of his men entered. I'd seen them around before. Custodians of a special kind. The ones who erased crime scenes. They began their work with mops and buckets, wrapping the bodies in painter's tarps as they went along. "I'm not glad he's dead, Alton," Adamo said of his brother. "I'm sorry he existed in the first place. In a better universe, predators wouldn't wear the skin of a human being." We smoked cigarettes because we couldn't leave until we'd been cleaned up too. Wei Lao, or more familiarly known to his close friends, Chi Wei, kept an interesting bottle of some kind of alcohol on his desk. It was both too early and too late to drink. Adamo called it white liquor, and warned me against drinking too much. He wasn't wrong. The clear liquid looked like vodka, but stole the tension and the trauma of the moment faster. In a rare feat, I only had one. "These guys wouldn't have known about the General Brock Hotel," I said. "But Charlie would have. His family probably owns it. Why send them with obviously false information?" "Could be arrogance," Adamo pondered. "The Asmodai are notorious sons of bitches," Olive concurred. Soft fingers massaged between my shoulder blades. I suppressed the urge to melt into a puddle. I thought a little more about it. "Maybe he's there," I said. "That would be too brazen, even for him," Olive said. "I'd use this ploy for a trap," Adamo added. He considered the now empty floors where the bodies and the blood had been removed already. "Charlie would know these men had no hope of killing you." "Why, thank you," I said. "If Wei Lao hadn't been here," Olive trailed off. Wei Lao had helped, but I would have been fine. "Okie dokie, Smokey," she replied sarcastically. More laughter. Ah, the sound. Adamo had crawled inside his own head to think. I could tell by the way his mouth hung open slightly, and his eyes became unfocused. Almost as if he'd left his body entirely. Yes, he concluded. They didn't have a hope. They'd be killed fast and, ideally, without revealing who had sent them. Charlie wouldn't be so stupid as to tell them who he was, but one of them probably recognized him. Charlie and his father had been regulars in the casino years ago. They practically advertised their visits, but he'd been intentional about them mentioning the General Brock. He wants us to go there. I helped. Yes. Definitely a trap, Olive observed. Charlie's still the target, I concluded, and we have no other leads. Adamo believed I'd spoken to him, and shrugged. He's not making himself known, so the coming war may only be diverted if we find him alive, and in charge of his family's operations. You actually agree? Olive and I said in unison. We'll need time to plan, he said. Okie dokie, I cheerfully concluded. But we're gonna need more white liquor. And a different workspace. And a shower, Alton, Olive suggested. You smell like death. We spent the better part of the afternoon in the apartment. Nobody liked my idea of showing up and pressuring the staff to reveal Charlie's room. Such a dumb idea, my love, Olive said, patting my head. He might not be there, and you'll be pressuring people who have no answers. She wore different perfume, less potent, and it allowed her natural scent, something like sweat, but good, alluring, to cloud my mind with other, less virtuous thoughts. She could read my mind. Not just stupid thoughts, either. I could speak to her just in my head, and she'd respond. Yet, I didn't feel scrutinized or awkward at all. She didn't respond to the filthy ideas playing in the cerebral skull theater, but I swore I could sense her general approval and more. Pleasure and need. An unsatiated desire coursed through her. I knew it. I wasn't making it up. Did the mind reading go both ways? Cut it out, Alton, she sniped. She blocked the connection like a lady realizing a peeping Tom stood outside the window. Not my fault. You should have closed the curtains. She didn't respond. I yawned and stretched out on the couch. The sun had begun to set, and I'd once again drank too much. Adamo had been staring out the window at the lake with its waterfall for hours, it seemed. I got tired of waiting. I'll check in as a guest under a false name, and in a disguise. See if he's there. If he is... I couldn't suppress another yawn. If he is, I'll kill him before he knows it. Restrain him for transport so we can destroy his body thoroughly, thus ending these bloody Albrechts forever. Turning slowly from the window, Adamo smiled weakly. That's a good plan. We can work out the details for destruction tomorrow. He sounded tired and disappointed. You okay, my friend? I'm in it, aren't I? He asked rhetorically before chuckling. We've locked arms out of necessity, and now we're stuck with both feet in each other's world. Never thought I'd be working for the good of the nation. Never thought I'd be a mobster, I said. But if we're stuck, I'm glad it's with a mobster like you. And not Frank. Whoa, Nelly, that would have been awful. He collected his coat and hat from the rack by the door. Dits and daws started pouring from the hydro radio in the closet. Adamo hesitated by the door. What does it say? He asked when the communication finished. I'd stayed on the couch to light another Lucky Strike. After I exhaled, I gave him the name. Margaret Dale. Know her? I shook my head. No. What does this mean for your plan at the General Brock? I don't know. Charlie's still a target. Looks like I have two, but only one lead. See you in the morning, Adamo. Good night. The idea of sleeping in my clothes held merit, but didn't manifest. I got up and went to shower, where her scent said she waited. The water sprouted hot from the head, and Olive's translucent silhouette appeared. Droplets streaming over invisible... well, everything. I didn't understand, and I didn't care. I stripped and got in with her. Feeling dirty, my love? I asked. Her arms wrapped around my back, and she pressed her body against mine. It felt so good. Almost divine. She kissed me next. Deeply and in the French way, which I'd never done before. I liked it. A lot. Is this why you're so happy today? I asked when her tongue relented. No, actually... The invisible woman vanished under a sudden splash of the water that had collected in her hair and on her skin. Olive? No answer. Boy, demonic dames were just as nuts as human ones. Fine, my dear, I said, shaking my head. Go quiet. Stay that way. I don't have time for games. I wrapped a towel around my waist. Quiet but insistent, a knock came from outside the apartment. Adamo had returned. He wore an expression his face lacked the muscles for. Confusion. I'd only known him for a handful of months, and yet, to see him distraught, upset me on a surprising level. I realized I'd already come to rely on his keen mind and seemingly infinite calm. Just like one of his men. "What's the matter, Adamo?" "Margaret Dale," he said, "is dead." He stepped forward, and I, only in a towel, felt obliged to move aside. "Murdered. And you'll never guess where." His hands shook as he struggled with his cigarette case. A habit. A tell, in fact, of his uncertainty. It happened whenever he confronted a problem momentarily beyond his staggering comprehension. Unlike him, I had to think about his question. More unfortunate, my already average critical thinking skills were corroded because of Olive's quick thinking. "The General Brock." "Back, are you?" I crossed my arms. She ignored the spurned lover act, and I soon felt ridiculous. Clearing my throat, I passed along Olive's answer. "The General Brock." He gave up on the cigarette case, pressing it into my steadier hands. "Yes, and what could it mean?" I retrieved one of his rolled cigarettes and planted it in his mouth. "Sorry, lighter's in my other towel." He didn't notice the absence of flame and sucked on the unlit dart, exhaling nothing. "What does it mean? What does it mean?" "Mission accomplished," I ventured. "But Charlie," he said, whispering the name like a chant. "Charlie, Charlie, what does it mean?" He wasn't asking me, but I thought I had an answer. "The Hydra messages aren't encoded. It's a shortwave radio. Someone could be listening to every one." I went to the bar, deciding I had not in fact finished drinking for the night. "Try to relax, Adamo. The Soviets eliminate their own assets from time to time. The RCMP aren't encoding the target messages, probably because they want the other side to know what we know. Margaret Dale's death could be the Soviets' answer. They don't care that we know." I held up a bottle of red wine to help me sleep. "Drink?" Surprisingly, he agreed. And then we were standing by the large window with generous glasses of Bright's Baco Noir. He swirled the drink, stirred into its darkness. "You'll still go," he concluded. "Yes." Despite the strong coincidence. Adamo finally brought the glass to his mouth, and gulped an amount considered gratuitous for an inexperienced drinker. The sound he emitted spoke of distaste. "We're missing something," he gasped. I drank too. Too sweet for my liking. Again, for the purposes of falling asleep, it served as medicine. A soldier rarely gets the big picture details. That's intentional. Keep it simple. That's what Intrepid had advised before he'd left forever. At least Adamo would stick around. I would stick around. With my hand on his shoulder, I offered comfort. "Drink, friend, for we all may die tomorrow." He chuckled. "I should drink more if it makes me a poet like you." We clinked glass. "Carpe diem." "Yeah," I said. "That." I drained the rest and heaved a sigh. "Ready?" Adamo choked on the vino vitae. "Ready? You mean now? But are you alright?" "You mean sober?" "No. But that's preferable for the scene of a murder. Can you get us in?" It turned out he could. Connections forged through bribery earned us access to a grisly scene in a hotel room at the General Brock. I won't pretend the building didn't appear above my station. Gilded brass or whatever slathered the edges of a brick tower forged in the past, but updated to modernity. A doorman guided us and a detective through a back door, to the interior corridors and a set of stairs, where we climbed to the 11th floor. Thick carpet swallowed the auditory evidence of our passage. The detective, whose name he did not offer, brought us through the constables posted throughout the floor, to a room at the end of the hall. Guests had been told to stay in their rooms. Rightfully so. Never in their worst nightmares would they imagine the content of this room. It was the smell, I figured. The stench of death. The police hadn't cleared the floor to spare them from asking what it was. That, or the possibility a killer hid amongst them. 10 minutes, spook, the detective said, signaling for the men by the door in question to step aside. Adamo held a kerchief over his face. Dear God. A thick runner of blood and ribbons of flesh ran from the door to the bed. Through a puncture in the window overlooking the Bridal Veil Falls, the sullied room greedily drank fresh, cold air. Bullet hole, I said, for both Adamo and Olive's benefit. What? Adamo stammered. His attention had been captured reasonably by the grotesquerie sprawled across the queen-sized bed, like forbidden charcuterie. Margaret Dale's head remained untouched. Perfect. If one neglected the fact that it had been expertly severed from her shoulders, and placed on the nightstand as if to witness the butchering of her body. Post-murder, her body had been flayed, skin peeled into a placemat for the rest of the work, meticulous separation of muscle from bone, organs arranged in a row, the brain dissected into its individual mysteries. Why? Adamo held on to me to keep from passing out. I found it oddly cute. A mob boss who abhorred violence. He ought to run for a government position. Why would he do this? Charlie? I asked. He didn't do this. At least, I don't think so. The look developing on Adamo's face resembled mine many years ago, when the horrors of war, the real depths of human depravity, had been forever etched into a young soldier's mind. At first, I'd been told this understanding was a rite of passage. I was leaving behind childish things. But I no longer bought what old men sold to help them sleep at night. I couldn't sleep at night. And what comfortable lie could I tell Adamo to ease him through the shedding of his remaining innocence? I felt tremendously sad to have to say anything but the truth. It's okay, I said. It gets easier. I left out the why. Because parts of you die. Because you become the thing you glimpsed in the abyss. How did... He began to retch. Even his psychotic brother had not fully taught him the contrived lesson of the world. She was shot, I said, moving along. The hole in the window. The killer missed at least once. None of the Albrechts used a gun. They didn't need them. Also, Charlie's an animal. I know he did depraved things. I saw visions in the wrought iron of their gate. Charlie extracts pain from the living. This woman died before all of this. That sound about right, Olive? Uh-huh, she answered after a beat. And I knew the rift she'd made in the shower hadn't closed a bit. The rug beneath the bed had been dyed in Margaret's red. I got closer, but stayed on the hardwood. These cuts were done with surgical tools. A small, bare footprint had stamped the floor. The killer is a woman. Could it be Margaret's? Adamo asked, his typical intellect suspended by shock. No. Dead people can't walk. Just to be sure, I picked up the relevant foot and put it alongside the print. Margaret had bigger feet. No, not hers. Adamo passed out. Nice work, Olive commented sarcastically. Oh, we're talking again now? No dirty laundry in front of the desecrated corpse, dear. I got the sense she hovered over Margaret. All this was unnecessary, if the purpose was to lead you into a trap. Uh-huh. Doesn't make much sense. So what does? The killing was both utility and personal, I surmised. We made a mistaken assumption, I believe. Oh? Not unless there's a third purpose. I picked up Adamo. His small frame felt so light, like carrying a baby. And, like a baby, I hoped he didn't wake before I got him to bed. With any luck, he'd sleep through the night, and attribute his experience to a nightmare. Charlie organized the trap, she continued. And we thought he'd be here to spring it. I thought he'd want to enact his revenge personally. Is that arrogant? Olive laughed, and I felt the tension in my body ease. A little. It was Adamo who accomplished the bulk of the deed, you'll recall. Yes. And I helped, I said, with emphasis on the I, earning another giggle. Adamo stirred uncomfortably in my arms. I shouldn't have brought him. You wouldn't have gotten in on your own. Oh, no, I said sarcastically. Then how would the trap be sprung? Don't play coy with me, my love. You wanted me to come. Yes, I admitted. What does that say about me? It says, she breathed, as if exhaling the reply with a bout of smoke. You like trouble, Alton Anderson. Huh, I answered. Not unlike an erudite sage, I know. A triangle, tipped down, had been drawn carefully above the threshold in blood. I don't remember walking out the door. The hallway had been drastically altered from when we'd entered the scene. Electricity surged into the sconces interposed between the identical doors, before calming and dimming to illuminated punctuation in an oppressive gloom. Persistent whispers tickled the back of my ears. I couldn't make out what they said. The constables guarding the guest rooms were all gone. Adamo moaned and muttered troubled gibberish, as if in the midst of a bad dream. I shushed him again, like I thought a baby would require. So, the trap had been sprung. Each step I took remained muted by the carpet. The elevator seemed so far away. Identical pictures and art made it impossible to judge our progress. Were we moving at all? When I looked back, I breathed a sigh of relief. The murder scene door, closed, stood at an acceptable distance. We were moving. We were getting closer to the end. So why did I feel the threads of my resolve straining? Olive? I said quietly. No answer. I became aware of Adamo's weight. He no longer felt like an insignificant burden. Olive? Where? A dark figure eclipsed the elevator doors at the end of the hall. Nothing but the blurred edges of her suit could I see, until she grinned, revealing a set of needle-white teeth beneath the shadow of a brim. I sat Adamo against the wall. Hey, Adamo, wake up. He couldn't be roused. Hello? I cried out to the smile under the hat, hoping the noise might also wake my friend. He'd only fainted, hadn't he? Since I received no acknowledgement, I stood up and drew the well rod from my coat and the customized holster inside. Perhaps you didn't hear. I said hello. Leveling the pistol, I took aim and began the approach. It didn't take long to notice a lack of progress. Smile under the hat remained the same distance. Demonic power changed the rules of the universe as I understood them. Damn it, Olive, I pleaded. I need you. That smile faltered into mocking dismay before she swept aside from the open elevator. There stood Olive in her sundress, curvaceous, porcelain skin aglow. Her long, brown hair moved in a gentle and impossible breeze. Tendrils teased away from her face. I looked away. You care for this lonely creature, Smile under the hat croaked. Oh, how sweet. You know you'll fall in love if you see it, and you do not want to be compelled to do so by the natural order. Her laugh carved away my nerves. She can hear you, sad man. I allow it. For now. Confess your love. Go on. Olive? I tried to focus on our connection. What's happening? Tell me what to do. Fragments of her words came from far away. I could make out nothing. No. No. Coward human. Smile added. Like them all. Self-important cows. Too late. Too late. Little succubi must suffer before the void. Casting my eyes low, I saw Olive begin the trek down the infinite hallway. The snap of the well rod got a laugh from the Asmodai. You're with Charlie? I asked as loudly as I could, for lack of a better idea. Olive's scent entered the range of my olfactory senses. Her usual Pall Mall, perfume, and just a hint of sweat, permeated with pheromones of alarm. I tried to reach for her, but the hallway moved, sending her back and out of reach. Look into her eyes, Smile mocked. Then you can touch. Another laugh did more than demean. It stole the will of those who heard it. I almost gave in. Alton? Olive? She'd broken the hold of this monster for a moment. Oh dear, Smile said. A daughter of Lilith with spunk. They all say they do, but this one really does. Unbothered, she gestured with a blackened, charred hand, and Olive became silent. She had thrown off the mantle of control. Perhaps I could as well. Quickly, however, I gave up on the notion. It was like being asked to think about something and having no clue what that actually meant, aside from pausing and working one's mug into a consternation, not unlike the facial expression associated with a hard bowel movement. Also similar, I didn't have time for this shit. Olive never liked it when I swore. She was a proper lady, for a demon. Olive was the connection I needed, not this smiling fiend. I focused on Olive instead of resisting Smile under the hat, and, for once, that shit-eating grin faltered. You can have an instant connection, mortal. Forever. Her grating voice sounded painful to use. All that is required is a look at the face she willingly presents. A tremor in my chin revealed uncertainty. Her smile widened further, beyond human limits. Probably perfectly normal for one of the Asmodai. Yes, she is frightened of what is to come. You saw the body. You know what your succubus will feel very soon. The trap, you see, wasn't for you. It's not a simple or well-known ritual. It requires the voluntary submission of both Margaret and some nameless ones. Their sacrifice shall be rewarded. The mortal will dwell in the in-between forever. The nameless shall be named. But your succubus will go to the depths, once I sever your crude anchor. There are no summoning rites for the daughters of Lilith, because they are commodities, used and discarded, lower than the nameless. The interior of her diseased mouth was displayed in anticipation of my reply or dismay. Not sure who the hell you think you're dealing with, I said. But you're not sending her anywhere, Miss Smiles. Miss Smiles, she echoed, clearly pleased. I like that. In the end, you will want her to go. I promise. That's why you want me to see her face, is it? Because it'll hurt more if I love her. For both of us, eh? I shot again, knowing full well the futility. Bullets had hurt Charlie because he and his demon occupied a real mortal body. Miss Smiles, on the other hand, was one of the kind Olive had described around the time we contended with Agaras, an independent and powerful duke of the demon world. She'd said many demons weren't content with possession. They preferred to work themselves into strange and terrible manifestations. Whether that required human bodies remained unclear. I'd never asked because I didn't want to know. Agaras had required at least one connection to a body placed in slimy stasis to appear as a curtain of flesh and tendrils. Clever boy, she said. But it matters not. You'll dump her once I begin. She'll go, and you'll die. Olive broke through stronger than before. I could feel her thoughts embrace mine, and I shuddered from relief and pleasure. Oh, Olive, my love, are you okay? No time. Run, Alton. No victory here. Break the connection. I'll help you. I don't know how she did it, but the mechanism to sever our paths became easy. She made it so. The nearest comparison would be like pulling the lace on a bow, letting the ribbons fall. A simple tug between index and thumb, and I'd be free of the Asmodai. The mission, or my place in it, would be over too. I could expect a simpler life. Probably still working for the RCMP, without the demonic element involved. I won't lie, that sounded pretty good. Settling down into some approximation of normal. Having a family with... With who? There was only one gal, and I hadn't even seen her face. I didn't need to. We were inside the room. The bedspread and floor were clean. Margaret Dale's eviscerated corpse was gone as well. You stupid, stupid man, Olive said, before our ability to communicate became impossible by the charred hands of Miss Smile under the hat. So you have chosen, she said, maddening suffering before the inevitable. When she rubbed her hands, ash and soot rose in the air. What the hell are you? I wondered. Are you possessing a dead body? Miss Smiles declined to answer. Now we begin. Margaret entered the room. I entered the room. Olive entered the room. All three of us somehow occupied the same body. I looked down on an ample set of... Alton! Olive reprimanded. I guess our connection couldn't be suppressed inside the same body. Listen to me. You've got to go. The end of this is certain. And your mind won't survive. Neither will I. In the end... She let go a whimper, and the rage grew within the heart I could no longer define geographically. In the end, she repeated, I will yearn for the depths. You know what she did to Margaret. That's the experience we're about to relive. But worse, she isn't going to shoot us first. I processed her words quickly and decided even faster that none of it mattered. I'm not going anywhere. Our severed head, the one we occupied, Margaret's, came off easily under the expert guidance of a saw. Miss Smiles worked like a dutiful butcher. The pain was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before, and I've been through more than most. Olive's experience, however, had only been in human pleasure. Her concept of physical pain began today, at the most extreme level. It's okay. It's okay. I tried to soothe. We're a severed head. It hurts, Alton. That's true, but are we? Are we really? I don't exactly understand. Oh, he's cutting into her chest cavity. She used a very sharp knife instead of a scalpel. Cuts burn worse than fire, in my opinion. Olive continued to scream inside our shared space of Margaret Dale. She went beyond my ability to comfort, if I'd had any ability in the first place. Miss Smiles paused after removing Margaret's left arm. You wish to continue, mortal? There's no need for you to endure. She's already begging for relief. She would go to the depths now if I allowed it. You need me to let go, I concluded. It's me, isn't it? Hold on. Maybe not. You wanted me to see her face. Love her. Why? So that you'd get a kick watching me betray my love for her? Sicko. You don't understand who you're dealing with. She laughed. If you loved her, you'd want to end her suffering. You'd grant her wish to be free. It isn't about me. I finally understood. She fell in love too. That's what she said. And when a succubus in love is cast aside, Smiles finished, they know, at last, the futility of their sole gift. Love is pitiful and weak. Too bad you didn't see her face. No matter. Her suffering pleases the Asmodai. Alton. Alton. Olive wept. Save me. It hurts so much. I didn't know. I didn't. I swear. Oh, God. There is no God, I reminded her. No angels. Just us. Through it all, she begged repeatedly to let her go. Margaret Dale's dissemination seemed to go on forever. I wondered how I could feel such pain so acutely, and not go entirely mad, or retreat and leave Olive behind as she desired. If I left her, it broke the connection. I had no doubt I would wake up somewhere, whole and without demonic affliction. Her tattoo would be absent from my forearm. I couldn't do it. The thought of losing her forever? I can't, Olive, I eventually told her, in response to her shrieking pleas for release. I can't. I don't need to see your face. Don't you get it? She ceased to scream. Her vocalized torment became attuned to mine, and together we formed a moaning chorus of suffering. When the last cut had been made, Miss Smiles no longer suited her name. Her disgusting mouth frowned before she spat on the flayed corpse. You have won nothing, she declared. I had no more will to respond. No cleverness left. The pain had been so immense. But I hadn't let her go. She'd been struggling, and I thought it had been a kind of cerebral writhing under the pain. But no, it was me. She had been desperately trying to free herself from my selfish grip. The smile returned. So there it is. Not my intention. Not at all. However, I am amused. This is different. She took off her hat and revealed her true face. A succubus can make you fall in love with a full revelation. An Asmodai achieves the complete opposite, convincing you of the impossibility of affection, especially of yourself. I can hardly recall the top half of Miss Smiles' visage. When I think of it, however, I see slaughtered innocence, a child that should have been free and happy, reduced to inhumanity through every unkindness the world has to offer. Starvation, disease, burning, and neglect. She replaced her hat, and I felt grateful for a moment. She'd given us the worst experience ever, and somehow, showing us her totality hurt even more. Goodbye, Mr. Anderson, she croaked one last time. I awoke in the room, face buried in the blood-soaked carpet. Adamo shook me with one hand and covered his mouth and nostrils with the other. Alton, wake up. You passed out. You passed out, I groaned. Yes, he agreed. I suppose we both did. I scrambled into a seated position, feeling my chest and checking for the existence of my limbs, in a state more familiar, less surgically removed from my body. Not my body. Margaret Dale's. Olive? I asked the air. Adamo appeared concerned. He had spoken before about the woman I seemed to converse with when I thought no one saw. Yet I'd never done so openly in front of anyone, especially not him. He didn't question it. He looked around and at the ceiling, noticing for the first time the inverted triangle on the threshold above the door. What's that? I didn't answer. How could I explain a mystical trap to a smart guy like Adamo? With immense apprehension, I shrugged off my coat and rolled up my sleeve. Her tattoo remained the same as ever. She was there. Here, I suppose. With me. Olive? I shouted, and Adamo shuddered, confused and afraid. Alton, he said. What's going on? I waited for her voice. I sat in blood for the better part of an hour. My friend sat with me. Olive said nothing. We lost today, I finally told Adamo. And I don't know how we could possibly win again. He helped me to my feet, and together we left the hotel, covered in blood. No words could he offer when he guided me back to the apartment. I sat in the chair and drank, knowing full well no comfort would be found in a bottle. I could only hope for oblivion. There could be no expression to remedy how I felt that night. No philosophy or religion. Some nights, poetry is not enough. I needed her. And she was here. But also gone. What the hell was I gonna do?
Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/Jordan Group Horror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you, which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.